Two penalties were enough to seal 3 points against Everton as Manchester United made it 3 wins from 5 in the Premier League. We're digesting the performance, looking ahead to Liverpool, questioning a nonsensical fancam outburst, and of course, all of your questions on the latest episode of your Strettycast.
Bruno Fernandes at the Stretford end, and after a ropey start, Manchester United lead.
Yet another ropey start to a Premier League outing for Erik ten Hag's side, and it's something that's becoming a little all too familiar this year, in a game that lacked any real quality, albeit not disregarding more than a few moments of class from our old soul in Kobbie Mainoo, or even the boisterous joy of youth from Alejandro Garnacho. Ultimately, Manchester United got the job done against a poor Everton outfit. 2 penalties from Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, sealing a 2-0 victory, and the closest thing to an immediate tonic for the disappointment suffered in the Derby Day defeat against City. But despite the win, it was yet another outing where the opposition managed to hit us for 20 plus goal attempts, and there was a distinct lack of control from either side throughout. Now, week after week after week, the three of us rattle on about injuries at the club, but we know that the lack of key players will inevitably affect the style of play. But at a certain point, there has to be questions asked as to why there is such a deterioration based on what we saw last year to this year.
Well, the way it started with all the wayward passes, you were kind of just expecting one of these games again, like you said, where you're going to concede so many chances. I think Everton, it's no surprise they're relegation strugglers because they're a bang average side. And I think if we were up against a decent side the weekend, we may not be talking about coming away from that game with 3 points because we weren't very good. We had, Garnacho was fantastic. Well, some key players like Casemiro could have really cost us in that game. Some of his passes in deep positions, if that was against a decent side, they're going to penalise us. If that happens this weekend against Liverpool in the FA Cup on Sunday, we're going to be in trouble. Big trouble. They have players to take advantage of it. And Everton, Calvert-Lewin's on the bench. Your man that played the weekend, I thought was crap. And, we defended well. But it was kind of one of those performances, and I take nothing away from Harry Maguire this season. I know he's out injured and hasn't been playing, but people will talk about how good Johnny Evans was or how good Victor Lindelof was playing out of position. But it's against crap opponents, teams that we can sit back and, nail Everton away that they throw against us. So I wouldn't be taking too much away from, say, Victor Lindelof playing well against Everton. I'd be taking something away if he plays well this weekend against Liverpool.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But I suppose you draw back to it as well because you can only really beat who's put in front of you. Johnny Evans can only mark who's put in front of him as well. One thing you mentioned there was Casemiro, and I think it's perfect because I saw he was particularly agitating Brian based on the tweets that I saw coming out. And the performance was notably poor. He had a pass completion of just under 76%. And for me, it was an array of questionable decision-making, particularly during moments where you would expect so much more from a veteran like him. I think his decline has been monumental this season. And I can't help but feel that a certain amount of that can be put down to the knock he sustained against Sheffield United in October of last year. And it was one that saw him miss 16 games with injury, and a lot of people forget that.
Just a quick one, Sean. Sorry to interrupt on that question. With the Casemiro injury, he picked it up in November, and that's 16-game spell. He came back for the Carabao Cup final. How long was he back for? Was he just back before that period? Because our season really tailed off. I'm sorry to kind of go off on a tangent. Our season kind of tailed off in terms of our performance levels after the Carabao Cup win. Casemiro's injury, being without him, getting him back, getting over that hurdle for the Carabao Cup, and then him dipping off again. His dip, you're right, was around that time. It's an interesting one. It's not just this season that we've seen it. It's been a while, and he is an aging player. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to...
No, I mean, it's perfectly valid because you're looking at a guy who has to fight off the battle that myself and Brian are fighting off at this moment as well, because with every passing year that goes by, five-a-sides get that little bit harder. So I can only imagine just how difficult it is at an elite level. But there's a lot of people, particularly at myself recently, they're firing this at me, saying it's almost like I told you so. I told you he was going to fail. I told you his legs were going to drop. But that wasn't the case. You know, this was a guy that was one of our top performers. And then when he got that little knock, he just found it really, really difficult to come back the same player afterwards. And then when he got the knock this year, that was as strong as it did, and he missed as much as he did. I think he's really, really struggled to come back from it. But I just wonder at this stage, with everything he's gone through with rehabilitation, does he have one eye on a nice little retirement plan?
As much as the knocks have definitely taken him back a bit, I think there's a case to be made, and I'm not defending the fella by any means, but I'm just saying, when he got those two dubious red cards, it looks like he's a little bit, maybe I'm wrong, it looks like he's a little bit slower to go in for tackles. And then when he is making tackles, he's making wrong decisions. It's like he's second guessing himself for the whole time, because there's a constant ongoing joke on social media. Casemiro would have got sent off for that. And it's a trending topic all the time. Someone puts in a tackle for Arsenal or for Chelsea, Casemiro would have got sent off for that. And it's, as much as it's humorous, it's kind of fair, because he did get targeted, I think, by referees for a while. He got those two very silly red cards. He seems to pick up a booking out of nowhere the whole time. Maybe he's just after hitting a phase where he's going, Jesus Christ, I can't do anything right. Like, I stick a leg in, it's the wrong decision. I stick it in the wrong time, I get booked straight away. That probably plays a factor on his performances. Plus the fact that, look, as you've said, he is pushing on a bit. Premier League's a tough league to come into for any player, and when you do start losing a bit of pace, or start losing a bit of, or the age starts catching up with you a bit, it can very quickly expose a fella. You're playing against young, sprightly midfielders there, even if they're not the most world-talented, world-class players, they will do a job on you. So to have a fella of Casemiro's age, you need fellas around you working their bollocks off to maybe just cover that little bit of extra for him. Luckily, he has Kobbie Mainoo in it, but the weekend, like you said, he had a pass completion rate of 76%. If you had said 7 or 6%, I wouldn't have actually gone against you, because it was absolutely diabolical. It's one of those performances, passing-wise, that literally took my breath away. It blew my mind. I could not understand what I was looking at. I was like, how is every pass going so astray? I mean, these passes weren't even getting relatively close to our players at times. Some of them were absolutely horrific. Some of them were just maybe lazy or not taking a look or what. But some of them were like bread and butter, simple enough passes you'd expect for a caliber of midfielder of Casemiro's caliber, that they're just normal run-of-the-mill passes. But they were nowhere near. Like, I was absolutely gobsmacked by what I was watching. And I think maybe his own confidence took a bit of a dent early in the game when he started getting a few things wrong, and all of a sudden he was again rushing things and second guessing things, and things just went tits up. He had a game, and look, you can always give a fella a day off. Every player can have a nightmare game. It happens the best of them. And it definitely happened one of the best of them the weekend with Casemiro, because he had an absolute fucking shocker. But I wouldn't expect to see a game that bad from him again soon. But come the summertime, or arguably if we didn't have the injury list we have, and there was a big offer came in January to go to the likes of Saudi or wherever, I would have no questions about letting him go in the summertime. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. If we can, I'm not even sure contractually how he is with us, but are we due a fee if he leaves us in the summer on his contract?
Yeah, I think we will get some sort of fee.
We're going to fee.
We would,
yeah. Okay. If we get a half decent offer and recoup a bit of money for him and see him off into the sunset and give him a pat in the back and say thanks a million, I'm perfectly happy with that. Like, I don't think it's at a stage where you're building that midfield with Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro going forward. I think that midfield has been shown up already, so time to look into the future.
Just on Casemiro, I'm reflecting back what I was saying about the mistakes he made at the weekend, the wayward passes, and how many of them could have been costly against a decent side. You know, like, they're things that really can't be having at the moment. We've had a terrible start to the season. We're clinging on for top four. Big tie this weekend. I was thinking at the weekend when I seen the first 15 or 20 minutes that if Casemiro keeps this up, which he did do, I would be taking him off at half time. Because it was only a matter of time, I felt, where it was going to really cost us. They were going to take the lead or whatever, and it'd be the disaster start to the game. But that's what kind of Ten Hag has to make big decisions. And luckily, it didn't go that way, and we got 2 penalties. And we've said so many times in the podcast this season, it's a game of fine margins, because we've had games where we should have got penalties and didn't get them, and then therefore did not get the result that we deserved.
You think if Ten Hag had better options off the bench, he would have made that change earlier, or he would have made the change in general? Like, you could argue after half an hour, he could have literally looked and gone, no, there's something wrong. There's something up with this fella today. It's not working. We probably need to change this. Or if we were in more danger or against a better opponent, maybe he'd have to act faster. But was it a case of he looked at the bench and went, don't really have a whole lot here to take him out of the game, and if I do, we could be in trouble. He might get through it.
Come on, your option is Amrabat, really, which is maybe okay in the closing minutes, but that's a bit like pissing in the wind, really.
Do you know one thing that really stung on this when we're speaking about Casemiro was the performance of Jimmy Garner on the other side. Like, he didn't go out there and have a worldie, but he went out there, he delivered a very, very sterling performance. And when we're speaking about Casemiro barely managing 76%, Jimmy Garner was in the mid-90s with his pass percentage. He's also picking up a little bit of nasty side to him as well in that midfield, which you need, and he's good going forward and going back, and very much a case of what could have been, I think, with that, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was nice to see Garner having a good game. It's nice to see Garner having a good career after he leaves us. I mean, a lot of United fans wanted to see him come through to the first team, and I don't think he had that level in him. Maybe I'm wrong, but seems to be doing all right in fairness to him. But on another tangent, as we like tangents on this podcast, we're getting strongly linked with 2 players from Everton. Now, I don't know if it's bullshit talk or not, but big talk about Braithwaite. I think is it pronunciation-wise not great with that one. And another Onana. Jesus, I have a headache as it is. But am I being unfair in saying Everton are relegation fodder and very likely to go down? Is that the basket? Is that the aisle in Tesco we should be shopping in, or is it not a bit much? No.
I see where you're coming from with that, and obviously it is a fair assessment to make. But these are 2 very, very good players that are playing in a system surrounded by individuals that are at a certain level. Take City and just look at Nathan Ake. And they took Nathan Ake out of a Bournemouth side that were really, really hanging on by the skin of their teeth. And he was starting week in, week out at centre-back for Bournemouth. So it just goes to show that individual players don't necessarily cultivate a losing system. With Onana, I actually made a joke about that last day, because when the link was coming through, you were the first person I spoke of just because of the name. He's a fantastic kind of destroyer, and that would allow a facilitation of Kobbie Mainoo to be able to push slightly higher up the field and be able to orchestrate it more essentially. In terms of the central defender in Braithwaite, he's a fantastically talented player who you could build a defence around for the better part of a decade. So I wouldn't be totally against either of those, to be honest with you.
I think the problem that I would have with Onana is they spent around, I think it was 30 million to bring him to Goodison Park. So they'd want a decent 50, 60 million fee for that. Players like that, you can get around South America, France, or whatever for a lot cheaper. I think if you buy smart, you don't have to necessarily spend that. And this summer, when we're talking about financial fair play and financial restrictions and having to sell an X amount of players before we can buy, we're probably going to buy a bit smart. And I don't think spending 50 million on Onana is we're crying out for that kind of signing. And we do need that kind of signing, but spending that kind of money, I think, would be actually ludicrous.
Don't get me wrong either. I'm not knocking either player as a player. I haven't really watched them enough to give proper judgment on them. But just looking at it from, I suppose, a purely simplistic point of view, we're looking at a team that are going down that are pretty shit to watch. Anytime I have watched Everton, I'm by no means impressed with them. They're dreadful. They're awful to watch. And I suppose I'm just taking the point of view that is that the shopping basket we want to be filling, players that are in a team that's going down and just can't really get much together. But I suppose, look, I take your point of view that there could be good players on the bad side, and maybe they could be making the step up. I do like to look at that Braithwaite lad, to be fair. He's a big, fast, fucking strong young lad. I like to look at him. Onana, There was a time, maybe a year ago or whatever, that I kind of thought, yeah, maybe he might be able to make the step up. Don't know. I don't know about him. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Maybe he's more of a mid-table player. But then again, maybe we're more of a mid-table club at the moment. But we should be aiming higher and we should be aiming for better standard. I think, just my tuppence worth.
The other way to look at it too is with Everton for relegation contenders, and if they do go down and financial struggles that they're in, they're going to have to sell these players maybe for a bit cheaper. So maybe I'm a bit out of line with Onana. Maybe we get a better fee than what I was suggesting. Same with the defender who's, on the cusp of breaking into that England national team with Harry Maguire kicking on and his uncertainty with his future. But yeah, I think it can also be an opportunity for United to get maybe a bit of a bargain. And you mentioned Nate Nake going on to be a success for City. You could easily argue John Stones as well. So yeah, there's no reason why we shouldn't be having a look at maybe a few clubs that are going down, because if you can get a good deal, take advantage of it.
Exactly. But as well, another thing that people are forgetting about this duo, Braithwaite is the flavour of the month because he's 21 years of age and everyone thinks good young player you can build. People forget Onana's only 22. So this isn't a guy that's 25, 26, 27 years of age. He's 22 years of age and he's already featured over 60 times for Everton in the Premier League.
Just
So
with his profile of player, though, I think you can get cheaper if you go shopping in South America, France, which I think that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his group with his new head of recruitment and sporting director, I think they will have a look at those markets for cheaper options, because they might splash in one or two areas, but I think we'll see some shrewd buys too, good value buys.
Well, I hope so, because it's only a few weeks ago that I made mention to Federico Redondo, who of course was Fernando Redondo's son, and he had a release clause for something like €8 million. And this is a guy that's younger than Onana and has the capacity to fulfill the same playing role while also being technically gifted. So I hope that is the case. I hope the scouting department do go to South America. And
Why not take that risk for 8 million rather than spending 30 million? You're still taking a risk either way.
Yeah.
The player still has potential. City are going to this market. Chelsea are going into this market. And it's something Ten Hag has told the previous recruitment team that he wanted United to start emphasising more in the future. And hopefully, the recruitment team we're building around the club, this is the way the big clubs are operating. I suspect United will be similar.
One thing I will say on my opinion on Onana, and I honestly did not know he was that young. I thought he was a bit older. If he's that age, I'd be far more willing to take a chance, because it changes my viewpoint on the fella. I would have thought he was about 25, 26. I don't know why. Again, I haven't looked into him enough, but if he's only 22 years of age, the level that he's at 22 is impressive. So there is possibly a chance he can make a big step up as he comes into his prime years. So as Dale suggested, if they go down and you can pick him up at a cut price fee or at least a decent level, at worst, they'd become decent squad cover. And something we've been struggling for badly all season is squad cover and rotation options and cover options. So, look, if you picked them up for 25, 30 million and they ended up becoming second choice in their position, at our level, it's not bad business. And if they're decent quality to come in, and I've made point of this many times, one of the biggest problems we've suffered all season is the drop off in level from starting 11 first team to the backup that's coming in, which we're seeing now again. Like, look at the Everton game Sunday. I'm a great man, and we all are, to be fair, for trying to put on rose tinted glasses and trying to make the best of bad situations and trying to back this and back that. And we do, and we try our best to be as positive as we can. That match Sunday was a shit show. It was absolutely horrific. It was diabolical to watch. And I know we've a lot of injuries and we keep on about it. And I know we're playing players out of position, but Jesus Christ, these 11 lads look like they'd never met before. It was that bad. Like, I mean, we're going through a poor enough spell. We're coming up against our arch rivals on Sunday, and we put in a performance like that the week before, and you're looking going, bollocks, this doesn't bode well for next week. Now, again, hopefully next week we do raise our game, and I'd expect any player that takes the field against Liverpool, regardless what position they're playing in, to give blood, sweat and tears. But it wasn't the most enticing of performances, and you can't dress it up anyway apart from being an absolute shambolic 90 minutes of football. I mean, even the first 5 minutes were one of the worst 5 minutes I've ever seen in Old Trafford. It was fucking horrific to watch. We were nowhere near it. We didn't lay a glove on them. They came out, we looked like we were cold out of the blocks. They came out all full of boisterousness, and we were just chasing shadows for 5 minutes. And I don't think we ever actually really got into the game. I know Garnacho split him down the middle twice, or split him inside the box twice, and really went at them. And I saw something, I don't know, was it an article or something I read today or yesterday? One of the things he's told to do is run at players. And it's blatantly obvious why, because he's a tricky little fucker, fast feet, and when he does get in positions, he'll do exactly what he did the weekend and draw you 2 penalties. On another note, we probably could have had at least another 1 penalty, if not 2, because Everton were literally playing basketball inside in their box. The second penalty showed for us, I'm still absolutely adamant, was a penalty. His arm does not need to be there. The first one, maybe so, but outside of them penalties, we didn't offer a whole lot. We didn't really lay a glove on them, and they were fucking peppering us with shots, small angles. And again, as we said last week, give credit where credit's due. Andre Onana had a relatively good game and kept out a few good shots. He played a lot better than that fucking twitchy twatting goals for Everton with his little dinosaur arms. Someone needs to have a word with him and find out what's going on in his head, because he's conceding goals, he's laughing, he's chatting to the fans behind him, the home fans, he's chatting to players. He's a fucking head case, and he was linked to us for a time. I'll take Andre Onana getting chipped while sat in his arse 6 yards out than looking at that fucking space cadet every week, without a doubt.
Well, it's a sign of the times, though, isn't it? That Andre Onana can get a positive mention from Brian without even being prompted by myself or Dale to do so. So that's, that's consistency. And it goes back on what we were saying last week, that is confidence. Confidence is building in him, and people are starting to get behind him. It's coming from the stands, it's coming on social media that people realise we're now starting to see the footballer that we signed, and it's fantastic to see. But we've both alluded to Garnacho, obviously, in the joy in seeing him as a flair player, putting the head down, making those scintillating runs into the box and just causing havoc. Now, the performance was shambolic, it was terrible, but he was very, very good. And while I can appreciate that his decision-making leaves an awful lot to be desired, his final touch and his shot is often lacking, his performance at the weekend was the brightest spark of the day. And really, Dale, I think it was badly needed following a difficult month for him.
We'll just jump in there quickly before Dale gets out in this one. One of the lads made a comment on this during the game, or maybe slightly after the game of the weekend, which rose a smile for me. It's very amusing how like Cristiano Ronaldo he is in the early years, and it's a very good comparison in performance-wise, because think back to Ronaldo when he came on the scene first, little flashy tricks, quick legs. In product of time was lacking, decision-making was a bit so-so. You saw that in spades the weekend, because Garnacho came in, ripped him twice, got 2 penalties, made some bad decisions, shooting was a bit off, could have grabbed a goal but didn't. You kind of got a mixed bag of both of them, but you can see the foundations are there, the ability is there. Everything you want to see in a kid that age that can be coached, taught and worked upon to develop into the player you want to be is there in spades. Absolutely. But it's a roaring comparison back to Cristiano when he first came into the side, because he was frustrating at times, and he was brilliant. There was moments where you were looking going, fucking hell, he's amazing. Like Garnacho's goal against Everton, the bicycle kick, or ripping him to shreds the weekend. There's these little moments in games where you look at him and go, unbelievable. And there's other moments in the game you look and go, oh, Jesus Christ, just pass the ball or make the better decision. But again, he's a kid. He's coming into a big, high pressure situation. But he's thriving on it. And again, those little mistakes and those little mistaken decisions, or whatever you call them, like taking the wrong option at times, that'll go out of his game as he develops into it and he grows further in the game. And I've absolutely no worries about him becoming a top player. But there are little times where he can just frustrate you that little bit. But again, totally acceptable. He's a cracking footballer. I really enjoy him. I really enjoy seeing him get the ball at his feet, and you look at him and go, he's not hitting the line to put a cross in. He's going to fucking go straight at this fella and give him a headache. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to watch him.
The thing with Garnacho, and I suppose you're asking the question about having a tough month, I really would not call it that. I think that would be being a little bit harsh. Based on what we were saying recently, the past few minutes about him being a young player, a bit like Ronaldo, frustrating at times. We must keep remembering this kid is 19 and 2 years ago was playing youth football and winning an FA Youth Cup with Kobe Mainoo. The two of them are such young players. You're not going to get that consistency. And we've had great managers, even since, controversially, since Alex Ferguson at the club, with Louis van Gaal, who dealt with loads of good young players, and he always said that's the one thing you can't guarantee with these young guys you give opportunities to. They might take them, but they might not offer you consistency straight away. That's not really in their game initially. And what we've seen, to give them even more credit, Garnacho and Kobe Mainoo, is we've seen quite a lot of consistency for two lads that are really only kind of coming into that first team. Now, when I say only coming in, I'd argue the two of them are, I said a few weeks ago that they're part of the core of this long-term plan for this team, or should be. And they're among the first names on Eric Ten Hag's team sheet, I have no doubt. But Garnacho's recent weeks, I think, look, even if it's only flashes in the pan, he is one of those players, Sean, where he can light up games in moments. And maybe Rashford was similar, but I would go as far as to say in a game, he's more potent than Rashford. You know, he's more active. He might have games where things don't come off for him, but he keeps going at it. He keeps trying. And that's what I really like about Garnacho, a sense of hunger about him that you might get with these kind of South American players. And just touching on consistency with Kobe Mainoo, what he's shown is just incredible, especially his assurance on the ball and whatnot we've spoke about before. But every week, he's putting in these 7 to 8 out of 10 performances each week in, week out. Now, that level of consistency, which you don't get from young players, Kobe's kind of shown that. And that's why he frightens me a little bit. Now, different roles. Garnacho, like I said, is a player that we're expecting big moments from, and not expecting, but that's the kind of player he'll become, is winning matches and scoring big goals. Kobe Mainoo doesn't always go for the Hollywood pass and might just do the easy thing and whatever. But as we've seen with players like Rooney, compare them at the weekend to Bastian Schweinsteiger, a young Bastian Schweinsteiger, fair comparison, but that's exactly the kind of player that we're talking about. Maybe a young Iniesta, Xavi, players that maybe play it simple. Carrick as another one. But look, he's on the right path, and I'm very excited about those two young players.
Everybody want to make note of the two Xavi, Iniesta, Pirlo, Zidane-esque passes Scott McTominay played the weekend, or are we all just going to avoid that and call him shite all the time? Or
Here's the Scott McTominay committee.
Come on, hang on a second. I know he didn't have a great game, and I know everyone was slating him and saying, "Oh, he was terribly shite." There was two passes there that he made, lads. I know people don't like him, and he's not the flavour of the month, and he's not the most flashy player. Give me a break. If you put Zidane on the back of that shirt and you saw them two passes played, you'd be seeing reels in it afterwards. Absolute defence splitters.
Were you ready to go home then, just happy after seeing those two passes, regardless of results? Just satisfied.
All I need is to see a defence terrorised by a winger and Scotty Zidane popping these little through balls. What I used to press on the PlayStation 2 years ago for the through ball in Pro Evolution or FIFA. It was like pressing that and he just played these little perfect triangle. These little perfect through balls. The second one in particular, I think it was possibly through to Garnacho. That was absolutely phenomenal. I didn't even think he had that in his fucking armory, to be honest. So again, he may not be Zidane, but there's times and moments where he just might be. We regret to interrupt this broadcast, but if you can place your cuppa down beside you without dropping the digestive biscuits you're dipping into it, and do me a favour. The biggest help that you, as a listener, can give us is subscribing to the podcast. Helps us more than you'll know. It only takes a few seconds, a bit like myself, so hit that button and let's get back to the episode.
I say it every single week, but by God couldn't we do with Roy Keane at this moment in time. I want to shift focus ever so slightly to something that is getting a lot more traction than it deserves. But as we're all aware, the world of social media and YouTube has made more than a handful of individuals very, very wealthy. And those individuals do share an array of contrasting opinions that are often set out to sway the viewpoint of impressionable individuals and the youth and the next generation of those coming through. Now, far be it from me to question the authenticity of certain people. But following a recent scenario surrounding alleged discontent over an interview given by Mr. Rasmus Højlund, a small online spat developed which appears to have pitted the utterly magnificent Andy Mitten against an individual who appears to have a little bit of a gripe. What is your take on this particular situation, Mr. Murphy?
It's going to take a minute. So to preface this whole thing, this isn't me knee-jerk reacting to the whole thing. It's not me just deciding straight now to give out about it and get involved and dig out someone. Anybody who's ever read any of my articles on Stretty News, considering my Strettycast is based on Stretty News, one of my, or two of my probably most high traction articles came from my dislike and disdain for the fancam community overall. I've always been vocal about it. I dislike it. I dislike it to an unbelievable level. I wrote articles basically calling them out and saying, look, these people to do fancam, they're called fancams. Originally, we're doing these little fancam videos, reaction videos outside Old Trafford and whatever else. Arsenal Fan TV was pretty much the start of it, where you started getting these sensational clips from another club. And funnily enough, Arsenal Fan TV has gone very quiet lately. Reason being, these type of outlets, their food, what they need to thrive on is negativity. They need negativity. They need to do sensationalism. They need videos with shock factor. More so aimed at opposition fans, in my opinion, than your own fans. It gives them ammunition to slag the shit out of the club and to go at players and managers and whatnot, which is what Arsenal Fan TV did so very well for so long, until Arsenal stopped becoming shite and we're actually good again and we don't hear from them. Mark Goldbridge, Brinta Cesar, whatever you want to call him or name, has an outlet called United Stand. United Stand is quite a very large following. Unbeknownst to myself, I can't understand why. But Mark Goldbridge's United Stand has been known over time to drive agendas and narratives against players and managers. In particular, the treatment of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he was manager stood out to me. The icons they use for their videos are clickbait. The icons are always inflammatory, and they breed and live off of clicks, likes, and subscribers. So that's the first type of person we're dealing with. The second type of person we're dealing with in United We Stand and Andy Mitten is a complete different side of the coin. Andy Mitten is a very, very, very respected journalist in general, but in the United community, probably one of the most respected United journalists there is. His fanzine United We Stand has been going on for years and years and years, cherished by many a fan. Just like Barney is at Red News, they deliver content that's by and large written by match-going fans. Again, United We Stand do a podcast, which is usually match-going fans, or almost always match-going fans before and after the game, heading to every single game. The content comes from guys and girls who actually attend matches. They're in the crowds, they're in and around the games always. And it's not solely for clicks. It's in a magazine, it's a fanzine, so it's a published print that's brought out once a month, and they bring out content that kind of, it's aimed at the likes of us. It's aimed at like people that want to read about United, want to learn about the history and the culture and fan culture and whatnot. So Rasmus Højlund did an interview with United Stand, and Mitten's United We Stand has to comment in an article, something to the effect of people were unhappy with it. Why did Højlund get involved with the United Stand? And some of the players weren't happy about it. Of course, some of the players weren't happy about it. Now, Goldbridge is saying it's absolute bullshit and Mitten is jealous about him. We'll get to that in a second. But of course it's bullshit. How wouldn't, of course it's obvious that players would say this. Why wouldn't they? These are players that are playing for the club that are probably very well aware of this United Stand outlet, who've probably gone after these players in numerous ways over numerous times while looking at the club. They've seen the negativity and the bile and the vile agendas that they set out. And United we stand and Mitten don't do that. They're balanced, they're normal, they're just reporting it as they see it. They're not aiming for clicks because they're not that type of outlet, so they don't have to aim for sensationalism. Now, one of the most baffling things of all this for me is that the club itself has enabled this by allowing the United stand access. They give them press passes, they allow them in and around Carrington, and they allow them in and around press conferences and whatever else, and they've given them access to a player. Let me ask you this. Sir Alex Ferguson's time when he was the boss, journalists that told lies in newspapers were caught by the scruff of the neck and fucked out the side door and told, don't come back again, you're not welcome. This season, we saw Samuel Luckhurst and a few others thrown out for press conferences because they're not writing the truth. They're not giving a fair reflection of what's happened at the club. And that's what the club should be expecting, a fair reflection of what is happening. How, in any way of common sense, are the club enabling this outlet, which specifically goes after managers and players week in, week out, which negatively drives agendas and narratives against players, against managers? Prime example, Manchester City against Man United the weekend before. Amrabat made a mistake, and Goldbridge, and this is a direct quote, "Fuck off back to Italy, you cunt." But the club are going to bring that guy in and let him get access to players. It makes absolutely no sense. If you choose to take your football opinions and your football content from the likes of these outlets, I'd worry about you. I'd worry about your interaction with the club, and I'd obviously assume that you don't go to games because you cannot be someone who's interested in the traditions of Man United, fan culture, realistic views on the club. If you want that, well, then United We Stand is the type of magazine you should be buying, and Red News, absolutely. If you want that, I'll be honest with you, it's podcasts like these that are people that are just having a chat with no agenda, no narrative. If you want to see someone trying to make as much as he possibly can financially off the club, go for it. That's what Mark Goldbridge is doing. He's using every single subscriber as a money tree. He's using Manchester United as a vessel to make money. And he's doing that by spreading negativity and vile opinions against players and managers, and has been doing for a long time very successfully. But for him to state that Andy Mitten was jealous of him is not only laughable, it's ludicrous. Because case in point in this, and I'll finish with it, Andy Mitten can stand and does in any home or away end at any game for Manchester United any week he wants. Mark Goldbridge will not be seen within 100 feet of Old Trafford, and there's a reason for it. Take from that what you will.
Dale, Andy is someone you're obviously very, very close with, and someone you've known for quite some time, someone you have a lot of admiration for, someone who has helped you. So to see this type of online bravado from an individual who is just hell-bent on thriving off notoriety and controversy, what exactly does this do? What sort of a picture is this painting for the next generation of supporter that is so heavily reliant on social media, that is so heavily reliant on modern technology, that they're buying this sort of tripe, and it's tripe that's intended to be able to generate this sort of notoriety? What sort of viewpoint do you have on this as someone who grew up in an environment surrounded by these respected individuals?
Well, I think it should be a wake-up call to everyone else what they're buying into, because United We Stand, a well-respected fanzine established for X amount over 25 years, they've pulled their pants down, and United Stand might be this juggernaut PR machine, which may be the reason why the club have used them. There's so many engagements and clicks and XY. But Andy Mitten has been, grafting since he was 15 years of age with United We Stand. He was in school when he came up with the idea to, I don't know, was it as far as using Crayola pens and that, but they mocked up a magazine somehow, and they sold it for cheap outside Old Trafford, which they continue to do all these years later. They keep it at a good cost. And that's why it's obviously worth subscribing to. And what you get is informed opinion with insight and good interviews and whatnot. But that doesn't need explaining here. It was a massive inspiration to my decision of going into media. I started Stretty News at 15 and got advice from Andy early on. Now, Andy's the type that I think will give you his valuable advice, you take it on board, and he'll do everything he can for you. You know, you can see if you take his advice on board and respect his work, and he goes out of his way for anyone I really know. You know, there's everyone that knows Andy that goes to games and speaks so highly of him, not just people involved in media, but Manchester United fans that he helps, and through United We Stand magazine and his freelance journalism, which extends, of course, beyond Manchester United to La Liga and traveling off to, I don't know, pilgrim or cycling with Diego Forlan and whatnot, or Anderson, if Anderson's able to get up on a bike still. But Andy has some fascinating stories. He doesn't need a big introduction, but you're dealing with here Mark Goldbridge, who doesn't even go by his real name, a complete clown, and built his, I suppose, empire on attacking other people in the same industry. So there was another YouTube channel at the time, Full Time Devils, and I remember they were very popular, approaching on mass amount of subscribers. Goldbridge came, but he built a lot of his popularity on being a bit more extreme than them, attacking their show, and people were kind of tuning in thinking, oh wow, what's this outrageous guy saying about these YouTubers? Do Manchester United have this now community where there's beef? You know, teenagers are kind of buying into that crap, that jargon. That's how he built his profile. Then he kind of started attacking players. And I remember one of the players that took it early on was Marwan Fellaini. A lot of kind of videos and clickbaity kind of stuff attacking him. And it was kind of showing what kind of material that he posts, but also touching on his kind of dig that this is jealousy towards or from Andy Mitten or United We Stand, or just complete bollocks. But anyway, I do know of another first team player that's unhappy at the moment with a number of issues. We all know he's unhappy, but I won't name him right now for this instance. But he's unhappy. One of the key reasons is some information was leaked out from him earlier on this season, which he believes came from the club. The information found its way to United We Stand, who publicised it on social media. That information wasn't true. That player knows where it came from and knew where it came from, feels it came from the club. And that goes to show you where United We Stand are getting access, not only access, but they're getting intel. And not always true, which it shouldn't be a surprise, because it really should be, whatever they throw out, take it with a pinch of salt. And finally, there is a few presenters I see, young presenters on the channel. I don't watch the stuff, but they've been kind of coming out after this and kind of issuing pleas about how they're being hard done by and people tarnishing and whatnot. If you associate yourself with a brand like that, you're going to be tarnished. End of. There's no sob story afterwards. I think everyone should know to see from this episode here what you're dealing with. Andy Mitten isn't someone that you ever hear really. He hasn't even replied to any of this, by the way. We're all just talking about it. But he's not someone that gets involved in these spats. Or he might throw out a tweet and get pissed off with an aggregator account that's after stealing 90% of his fucking article that he's travelled half the world to go and cover. That's fair game when you're a journalist. You're working hard and you're working your buttocks off. But he doesn't get involved in this. Mark Goldbridge will try and make the most of this and maybe take a few days out and tweet about it for a bit and whatever. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if his neck went into his shell a bit, because I'd be embarrassed if I were him, because United We Stand certainly pulled their pants down. And it was my highlight of the weekend, apart from taking 3 points off of Everton.
There's not a whole pile that I can add on to that. It's put about as good as it can. And anybody who's listening here who may be of a certain age or a certain disposition that they're unaware of, I suppose, the ramifications of what certain individuals' actions, words can actually achieve. To put it very, very simply, the idea that Andy Mitten would be jealous of this man is nothing other than ludicrous. He has earned the respect from United supporters, journalists, the three of us, and has received worldwide acclaim for nothing other than genuine, honest journalism. So just be very, very careful where you are getting your information from. Be very, very careful of where you're getting your news from. And be very, very careful of who you choose to associate yourself with. Because ultimately, these things will come back and bite you.
It'd be like me saying that Brian is jealous of my beard.
It is a beautiful beard.
I wouldn't say it's a beautiful beard. It's like more of a suggestion of a beard. Just like if a beard wanted to be, if it's like a baby beard wants to be an adult beard, but it can't. It's just not of age yet. It'll get there
Mine's a bit
someday.
Bahia looking at the moment.
It's a bit
It's
shit looking, Dale, to be honest.
Shit.
Solskjaer! An incredible comeback by Manchester United.
The unforgettable sounds of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer breaking Liverpool hearts. It's something that we grew up with and something that we're missing, but on that cherished memory, United will welcome Liverpool to Old Trafford for an FA Cup quarter-final tie on Sunday at 3:30. At this stage of the season, following everything we've discussed and everything we know, it presents the only opportunity for potential silverware against a side that are receiving all of the romanticism that you'd expect with a departing manager and the media loving that they generally receive. This is a huge, huge tie. And given the nature of performances, the nature of displays, coupled with the inevitability of the injuries that we discuss every single week, it's going to take a mammoth display to get something out of this. But I have a funny feeling that Old Trafford will be rocking on the day. And surely to God, at this stage of the season, with everything that's occurring, these players will go out and want to give their absolute best for the badge. Can we expect anything less than that, Dale?
We shouldn't, because this is the biggest game of the season, I think, for us so far. It's a huge game. Not only is it the FA Cup, which we've now come to terms with it being our only chance of silverware this season, but it's also becomes kind of a bigger backstory now with Jurgen Klopp leaving at the end of the season, that in a few weeks we're going to be talking about stopping them and trying to win the title, but now we need to stop them going on to win another piece of silverware in being the FA Cup. It's also a trophy that we got to the final last season, lost against City. That's still a possibility this time around, but we'll talk about that when we get there, or if we get there. But yeah, this is huge this weekend. I don't think players need any extra motivation of a backstory. That's just for fans to discuss and people like us on podcasts with time in our hands to do it. For the players, I think a lot of these players, and we discussed it before about which players that are part of the core for the future. I'll be looking at this game at the weekend and thinking about a lot of the players, and a lot of their futures aren't safe. And they should be playing for their future. That's the way I think a lot of them should be going into the game, that with the new co-owner in, lads that aren't starting, even the likes of Scott McTominay, who's been playing well of late. Every single one of those lads need to go into this game with a statement performance, come out of it, because, like I said, biggest game of the season. And I think it'll be one of those ones that if we come away with a win, knocking those bastards out of the FA Cup, it'll be one of the real highlights of this season. I know we haven't had many, but it would be a nice highlight.
Absolutely be a nice highlight. And especially when you're coming off of Sunday's Liverpool City fixture, one that, let's call a spade, Liverpool were unlucky not to get out of there with all 3 points. And they're a side flying high. Brian, what way are you looking at this? Can the players that we have been seeing for the last few weeks, few months, that are, I suppose, letting on average 20 to 25 shots against them every single game, can we expect any more?
Just one of those games, isn't it? All bets are off. History goes out the window for how you're playing. Form goes out the window. Now, look, at least it should. Form should go out the window. Injury lists should go out the window. It's one of those games where, I said it earlier, if these lads, we're coming off the back of a shit performance against Everton, we're not in the best of form. But if these lads can't raise their game on Sunday against Liverpool in a cup knockout game at this late stage of it, they don't deserve to be at the club. You have to be going out there and just giving absolutely every single bean of energy and effort and desire. And if you don't, and you walk off the pitch and you're not absolutely fucking wreck tired, and then after giving everything you can, regardless of the result, whatever about the result, if the players don't leave that pitch after giving every single thing they have inside them, it's less than what they should have given. So I made a joke about it when the draw was made that it would be typical United to be playing shit, not the best team in the world, and end up knocking Liverpool out of the cup and ruining that little Klopp-loving legacy fairy tale for Sky Sports. So even though we were shite the weekend, and even though the season hasn't gone great, I stupidly fancy us to do them. I really do. I don't know why. I don't know what's telling me that. It's that blind optimism that sets in. It's that fanciful notion that they're all going to turn up on the day and we're going to just shithouse a win and take them off the pitch. But am I looking forward to it? No. I absolutely despise playing them. I hate playing them every season. But getting that win over them would be the sweetest way to spend the day. And given that it's Paddy's Day, I'd assume any Irish lad who's either here or over at it is going to be full of beer, full of confidence, full of noise. I'd fear for any Liverpool fan within touch and distance if we do get to knock them out, because that should be a very, very enjoyable day. But let's see what they have up in our locker. Let's see what we have. I think Rasmus Højlund is back for it, is he? Is it not?
I'm not
Is he touch and
entirely
go?
convinced he is. I think that got pushed out to the end of the month. I hope I'm
I
wrong.
think he'd be back.
Might be
I'm
sneaky.
pretty
yeah.
sure they shared a picture of him on social media this morning, or did I, or something? I don't know.
I'll say this. So if Højlund is back, my confidence level would definitely increase a lot, because the shape changes and the type of football we can play changes. If he's not, I'd be going for the opening 45 against City for 90 minutes and be clever and just fucking shithouse it. But I don't care. Do you know what? I actually don't give a bollocks. I don't give a shit if it's the worst performance of the season. I don't care if we play the most putrid of football. I don't care if we stink the place out for 90 minutes solid and we win in the 90th minute with a deflection off Johnny Evans' right testicle. I don't care. As long as we beat them, that's all I want. Anything will do.
Mason Mount to come off the bench in the 80th minute, making his long-awaited return from injury to hit the winner. Oh, by God, he'll do it in front of the Stretford end. I reckon Marcus Rashford is going to turn up. This is the type of game, at this point of the season, with everything that's going wrong. If he cannot lead from the front, this is the game that Marcus Rashford can announce himself this season. And like you, it doesn't make any sense, Brian, but I just have this sneaking suspicion that we will get a result by hook or by crook. I just have a funny feeling it's going to go our way.
If it's the 17th of March that Marcus Rashford announces himself this season, I will be definitely shaking my head a small bit. Whether I hope he does, but like we keep saying it week in, week out, this is the one Marcus Rashford should go. We're waiting for him to kickstart the season. It's again, I said it in the last podcast, and it's the reason why we're all frustrated, because we know what he's capable of. We know he can rip them to shreds if he's in form and confident and ready to go. I can't see it. I can't see it. I haven't seen it so long, and I'm probably at the stage where when you're thinking about this game, I'm more thinking, I hope Garnacho's on form, because I'm just not expecting it from Rashford. I hope he proves me wrong. I really do. And it would be the quintessential game for the Manchester United lads to literally finally turn up and announce himself. I really hope he does, but let's see.
It's not like he's some unbelievable fullback, Trent, but he's out, isn't he?
Yeah,
No?
Trent is out. Trent
Trent's out,
is
so
Trent is
I've-
one of many that's out. But
Yeah,
I
so I've
think
no idea who will be on Rashford, and I guess it's a bit of a shame Trent is out, because when he's asked to defend against Rashford, he usually has a field day. So look, whoever's there, I think Rashford, of course, hasn't had a great season, scored that great goal against City. Bruno gave him the penalty at the weekend, which I think was a nice gesture from the captain, which is worth taking note of. And he got his goal, so there's no reason why not. Big game, he'd want to stand up. There's been a lot of us talking about him, pundits talking about him. But I thought what was most interesting at the weekend on TNT Sports was Wayne Rooney speaking about him, and he was asked if he had any sympathy for what Rashford's going through, because of his patch and form, and obviously Rooney, experienced in the game, has gone through goal scoring ducks and whatnot. And he said no, he wasn't sympathetic towards what Rashford's going through, because what Rashford has is a privilege. And I think even from listening to Wayne Rooney saying that, even from Rashford should be listening to this, but he should be looking at, like, that is clear advice, that you're not going to get a stepping stone at this level. You have the ability, and we all know he has the ability. he has to go on now and believe it. And when Marcus Rashford believes in himself, that's when he can score his 30 goals a season. He believed in himself last season. We know it's possible under Ten Hag. I don't think that's the biggest fraction with him, but I think he can get back to it. And what better way to really announce a comeback? He's got his good goal against City, got his penalty against Everton to win the game for us in the FA Cup quarter-final against them.
The other person who passed a comment on Rashford the weekend to a teammate in Garnacho, which I thought was a class comment from him. He was interviewed after the game. Obviously, in comparison, Keane is an ex-player and a pundit, and he can give a more drastic view, I suppose, if you want to put it that way. But they asked Garnacho after the game about Rashford taking the second penalty. Was it planned? Was it something you'd organised? As if to say, like, you know, it was a little charity penalty for the sake of argument. And he was like, no. If Bruno's not playing, Rashi's the second penalty taker, so it's normal for us. It's no problem. And then he goes, it's no worries. We're a family, so it's no problem. And I was like, you know what? That for a young lad coming through, the way he backed his teammate and the way he said we're a family, I just thought it was admirable, and it was very well dealt with a little cheeky smile on him. So a hat tip to Garnacho for dealing very well with that little situation.
On that, it is that time where we will dive into our listeners' questions. We have a very interesting one to get us started today from an individual by the tag at squad number 17 on Twitter. And they're asking us, lads, how many players will leave the club this summer? They get that a few will go as their contract is up, but can we seriously expect other clubs to come in for them? And will they pay the stupid wages? Dale, how many players do you anticipate leaving the club this summer?
Take this estimated number, but I think it'd be a high number, like an 8 or 10. Regarding players being sold, it's not something United have been renowned for in recent years. We've really struggled at it, but I get the impression Radcliffe and his new group will want to, or will be adamant to, kind of take the pinch with a few sales and lose value on players, because there is that reality that these players are on massive wages. Clubs aren't going to be able to pay that, and they're going to have to compensate one way or other. So I think, there will be some players shifted out for maybe lower than what they're worth, but we'll just have to bite that bullet, because this is a result of recruiting poorly through several years and buying badly. And it kind of touches on what I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast about Onana. I'm not saying he's a definite guarantee of this, but when you're talking about a player that already cost 30 million, you're going to be paying around the region of 50, I think. That kind of profile of midfielder, yes, he's 22. Like I said, it's available elsewhere. France, South America, there's loads of them out there. So I think, there will be a large number sold. I'm going to say 8 or 9 at the very least.
Yeah, I'd expect 8 to 10 to go in the summer between contracts running out and players deemed not good enough. I also have a sneaky suspicion there's going to be a statement sale made. I don't know who it is, but I have the feeling they're going to come in and lay down the law and say they're going to sell someone who you might be raising your eyes a little bit and going, Jesus, I wasn't expecting that. Well, maybe I was deep down, but I didn't think it had actually happened. It's going to be one that'll put the shivers up a few other players in the squad and give them a kick up the arse.
Brian, who was the player that features in, I think, a published book in the last 2 years from Sir Jim Radcliffe?
You've got me.
Sean?
Who features in a book? Given how...
I believe on the first page of it too. In
Yeah,
a bit of a rant from Sir Jim Radcliffe. Now,
Well,
don't go searching this now. Just
given the way you're after cocking your chest out, I'm assuming it's Bruno Fernandes.
Good guess. But yeah, okay. Just throwing it in there.
Okay.
He commented on Bruno's antics in that game against Liverpool and said something along the lines that it wasn't very impressive. But it was just interesting that this man then went on to bid for Manchester United, and what Brian is saying about a statement sell. Also, what we were saying in recent weeks about players maybe causing fraction tactically. Bruno, Rashford, and we had loads of questions about it too. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying, look, that's just something to think about.
I'm going to start naming some players here because I'm trying to think and get the best out of this with the squad that we have. I'm going to name some players. You tell me if you think I'm wrong that these boys are going to leave. Sofian Amrabat.
Yes.
Anthony Martial.
Yeah.
Yes.
Christian Eriksen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Casemiro,
I think so. Yeah.
Rafael Varane,
Yeah.
Johnny
I imagine
Evans,
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Mason Greenwood,
Yes.
Hannibal,
Yeah, we're getting to a big number here already.
Alvaro Fernandez,
Yeah.
Dan Gore,
No.
Yeah, I don't think he will. Maybe, but I don't think so. Low on maybe.
Jadon Sancho,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Donny van de Beek.
Yeah. Jesus, we should.
That's a
Go
lot
on.
of players. That is an
It's a lot of players.
awful lot of players.
That's before you even consider selling players that you don't deem necessary in the squad and whatnot. They're more guaranteed departures or pre-planned departures. So yeah, there's an exodus coming. But if you lose, and another point, if you lose that many players from the squad and your depth drops off that much, even though they're not great in depth, you need to bring an awful lot of players out of somewhere.
This is what I was saying, Brian, about with the Onana thing and buying into those cheap, or not cheap markets, but clever markets and buying smartly. You can't afford to go out and fully expect these guys to do this. Is go out and buy one or two marquee players, big names, because they want their shiny toy. Totally understand that, but I would be very shocked if their whole recruitment strategy is based around that. I would think that they would maybe get one or two big buys and then smart buys 15, 20 million, 25 million, but not always going for those 50 million Fred type signs that, look, we need to move away from. We need to stop being ripped off.
Next question today comes in from James Gorse on Twitter, and his question to you lads is, what would be your 3 positions to target in the summer in order of need? So not only just the 3 positions you want, can you specify which is more important of the 3 in 1, 2, 3?
Okay. So to go 1, 2, 3 is difficult. James is a good one. I think the most pressing position for me is central midfield, to supply someone an avenue to allow Kobe Menu to go a little bit further forward. So a CDM, I would then go for a central defender to come in there and to be an individual who's going to start and obviously bolster the avenue and what we have with regards to really solidifying a strong, commendable starting central defence, presuming Lisandro Martinez can come back from this injury. And I would also go for a left back, and I would base that on the premise as well with the injuries that we're having with Tyrell Malacia and with Luke Shaw. But you, Dale?
He said 3, so my first is going to be 2 options because I can't do a pecking order of first and second.
No, you have to. You have to do a pecking order. This was stipulated in the question. There's nothing around it. So you have to go pecking order.
The importance of signing a defensive midfielder and a centre back is just total equal measure, because this season we've seen how desperate we are, not for depth in centre back. We have plenty of options to play centre back. The quality is way below par. The only centre back, and he's by far our best, he's our only world class centre back, is Lisandro Martinez. We need to find a new partner for him. We also need to find another left sided centre back, I believe, that can play out of the fence in a similar fashion to him. Not going to find probably as good as him, but someone of a young character to come in so that when he does have an injury or a suspension, that we're not flip-flopping and we have players that can fit the system. Centre defence midfield, crucial as well, because as we've seen, we're light in that department already, and Casemiro is miles past his best, so we need a replacement. The third option, I agree with you on left back, but I'm going to select striker. I think it's absolutely crucial. And I think we spoke about it a few weeks ago about what kind of profile United should go for. I honestly hope, and I love Rasmus Højlund, and I think he's going to reach the very, very top. But what we need probably 2 strikers. But if my next option would be a top player like a Victor Osimhen. Don't see why not. Why not have both of them? let's build a new team. I don't know what way we're going with this. I don't know what manager we're going to have next season, what formation we're going to be playing. I have no idea, but let's go for the best. And of course, this follows on from James's question from Lauren J. If you could only keep 5 players from our current squad for the next season, who would they be? And also, if you could bring in 5 players for next season, who would they be? So you're being asked, lads, to keep 5 from the current squad this time, but also, which 5 players are you bringing in?
By God, that is a fully loaded question.
Do a quick fire. Do a quick fire if you can.
Quick fire. So if I can keep 5 players from the current squad, I'm keeping Lisandro Martinez, Mason Mount, Kobbie Mainoo, Alejandro Garnacho, and I'm keeping Rasmus Højlund.
There's Mainoo, Garnacho, Højlund, Scott McTominay.
Licha, Rasmus, Garnacho, Mainoo, and Onana.
I just found out just before we go any further. Rashford or Bruno was not mentioned, and I actually meant to mention him, but I stuck McTominay in there just to be sarcastic.
I think I'm more so looking at it in the manner that I've been going for the last couple of weeks in trying to build this platform for a team that we can cultivate and build that can compete over the next decade. And I do believe Rashford should be a part of that. I also believe there's no reason that Bruno Fernandes shouldn't see out the remainder of his years, but when pressed on the matter of 5 players, I suppose when I'm looking at that decade, that's what I'm going for.
Rashford can be part of it, Sean. Right now, he doesn't belong part of the conversation, but it's totally up to him. Get his mindset right. We know he's the ability, but he's every reason why he can be part of the long-term project of this club. No doubt he has the ability 100% to be one of the best players in the world. He could have a top season, could arguably go on to win a Ballon d'Or. No, it wouldn't shock me. But it would be a massive disappointment. And the same levels of really, I suppose, Ravel Morrison. Not really, because we've got great things at a Rashford, I suppose, as well. But it would be such a disappointment if he didn't go on to reach the heights that I guess we all expect of him.
The thing about it there is that yes, and I've said it numerous times, we all know what he's capable of. And yes, that's what frustrates us the most. But if you're looking at this based off this season, to say this fella's going to win the Ballon d'Or, it's a big ask, because not only does he not look like he wants to be at the club at the moment, he doesn't look like he's enjoying football at the moment. So I think there's big changes needed for Rashford on and off the pitch. I'd almost go as far as to say, and I probably said it a couple of weeks back, he needs to show something between here and the end of the season, because if he doesn't, I can't argue against putting him up for sale, and that's a shocker. Like I didn't actually think it had come to a stage where I thought Marcus Rashford would be sold by Manchester United. I always assumed he'd be kind of a Giggs-esque character. He'd always be there. He'd stay all these years. He'd play out for the club, one club man. This season has changed. It hasn't changed my opinion of him as a footballer, because again, as you said, devastating, brilliant footballer. But is he going to be part of this club going forward long term? Remains to be seen at the moment.
Now, Lauren, we're not being rude and cutting off the last part of your question, but I reckon if we get into that, we could add another 15, 20 minutes onto this, and we simply don't have the time. So finally today, we are going to finish out with a cracking question that has come in from AJKA. And I'm going to say it like that because I don't want to butcher the pronunciation. But he has asked us to describe a typical match day experience from Ireland to Old Trafford and away games. If possible, European journeys as well, for lads like himself who don't go to games. Dale, describe a typical Ireland to Old Trafford trip for yourself.
My typical one starts on a bus run by Kavanagh's. I get that for about 2.5 hours, 3 hours to Dublin. Then I get a 45-minute flight to Manchester, and it's usually fine from there. But that bus can be a bit of a hindrance at times, as Brian will remember. I was coming back from Munich, and when flights are delayed, there's one more bus between midnight and 6 a.m. You about 15 minutes from the terminal getting off the flight to sprint, getting past all people with luggage, and that it's not great. But we made it there in time. Thankfully, I nearly threw up with the run that I had. But look, these are all parts of the journeys, and I enjoy it. Every trip that I do with Brian, I'm sure I'll be doing one with you, Sean, in the near future as well. Look forward to that. But every trip you go on, you make these memories, and even the moments that don't go your way, you have your laugh about it. And that's the joys and part of the whole love that I have for this football club.
Absolutely. And Brian, a man who has really, really taken to the European way as a paddy exiled in West Limerick. What's it like getting over to Galatasaray and beyond?
European games are a particular pain in the arse travel wise because most of the local, well, actually none of the local airports fly to most of the locations we play in, so it's almost predominantly flying from Dublin. Dublin airport's 2.5, 2.75 hours of a drive, and the flights are almost always early in the morning. So it's you're looking at a 1 a.m. departure on no sleep, fly up to the airport, travel over. And for European games, I've learnt my lesson. I used to do one-nighters and keep the cost down, but you're so bollocks coming home after it that you're travelling so much to get there. Then you're obviously on the session over there. You enjoy the game, you have a session that night, and get back the next day. That I've started to get a bit of sense in my older age, and I've started to extend the trip by a night. So I try to get in there the day before the game. Obviously, there's a load of reds around before the game, so it's absolutely great crack. But it gives you a chance to get settled in and get a bit of sleep in and enjoy the second day on match day. But one nighters are a killer. It's like doing like for typically for trips to England, it's almost always over and back the same day because you're trying to keep the cost down as much as you can. You're trying to save money on a hotel and trying to fly over in the morning and back at night. But again, the flights are always red eye early mornings and late flights back at night. So a lot of the time it's touching close a 24-hour trip just to go to a game, and lack of sleep, a hell of a lot of effort, and like you're flying into various airports to try and get the games as cheap as you can. So you could be flying into Birmingham and hopping on a train straight to Manchester trying to get to the game or whatever location you're going to. So it's a pain in the arse.
Doesn't help
It's a
when you go
shame.
to the wrong terminal, though.
It's happened only a couple of times. I've gotten better at missing flights than I have going to wrong terminals lately for some reason. I tell you, boys, age is catching up. But trying to get to as many games as you can in the season, you try and keep it as cheap as possible. But the effect on the body afterwards is fairly harsh, and the effect on the wallet it hits as well. But look, it's what we love and it's what we do, and that's what it's for.
Exactly. And I had to laugh, Brian, when we saw this question coming through earlier on because it was something the two of us were speaking about. 90 seconds later, the question comes through. And to add my own 2 cents to this, it's fairly familiar because I was at Everton. And to put this into perspective, I live over on the southeast coast of Ireland. And my son, Marcus, who I'll give a shout out to, who has turned 18 years of age in the last week, he lives down the very, very bottom of the country. So just to go by numbers wise, you're looking at a 292-kilometre journey to collect him, followed by a 291-kilometre journey to Dublin Airport. And that particular flight that day brought us to Leeds because unfortunately a €20 return flight from Shannon to Liverpool that I used to get as a season ticket holder all those years ago no longer exists. So like Brian said, you have to try to facilitate your journey by getting the best possible cost you can on your flights. But the long and the short of it, from travelling from the south of Ireland to get into Manchester to see United win a 2-0 lacklustre game against Everton, was 1,326 kilometres of a round trip. And we do that all to go over and suffer the love of this football club, and we will continue to do so until we are old and greyer than we are going as it is. And on that particular note, we shall part ways today. We thank you all very much for spending your time with us. We hope it was enjoyable, and once again, thank you very much for all of your questions. For those we couldn't get to, keep submitting them because we will get to them next week. I've been Sean Connolly. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do so on Twitter at SeanConnolly85. Mr. Brian Murphy, how can they get in contact with you?
Find me on Twitter on @DaveTrippingRed, and I usually ask everyone to like and subscribe and make some sort of a funny jibe, but on a completely different note tonight. Let us all raise a pint or a glass or a can, as I have been doing myself, to a man that a lot of us will miss very dearly at this time of year, Mr. Ian Sterling, whose anniversary occurs today. So respect and love to Ian Sterling, his friends and his family. He was one of the most valued and respected Reds around and helped an awful lot of us. So I'm sure everyone here misses him very dearly. So we'll end on that one.
Just add to that, of course, rest in peace, Ian. You can follow me on Twitter at O'Donnell Dale. And of course, subscribe to the Strettycast, Apple Podcasts, but Spotify and whatnot, and it's on Twitter, YouTube. You can get it everywhere. So just keep supporting the podcast. Can't thank you anymore for your continued support so far, and of course the questions. We'll speak to you again next week, hopefully after turning a nasty tail at the end of Klopp's reign at Liverpool.